to the world bourgeois. The Reds are National League Central Division champions. In the air, left center field. Did he? He did! He did! Reds win! Win! Line to the right field. Genius, the first run ever with 4 home runs in a game. Can you believe it? In the air, down the right field line. Does it have a chance? The Reds have won on a 3-run home run on opening day by Ramon Hernandez. A strike away and out away is Homer Bailey. Ground ball to third. Frazier gloves. Throw to first, and Homer Bailey, for the second time in his major league career, has tossed a no-hitter. Oh, gosh. Oh, my God. Are you kidding me? Holy Moses, the second player in major league history to hit 7 home runs in the first 10 games. In the air, and the Reds win. What a dream beginning to the career of Jay Bruce.
All right, I don't really believe what I just saw because we were sitting here manifesting this. I thought for sure that Elly De La Cruz was going to get a pinch hit opportunity and come in and finish the deal. Instead, it was Matt McLain, and I actually am stunned that that is the first thing that happened as we sit here and we watch. Now, I'm not going to get into all the things that have happened at Chatterbox when we've started to do things, but we've had incredible luck when we've started to cover things. I'm not forecasting anything from the Reds front, but before we get into all of the stuff, Nick Kirby, I don't even know if you got a chance to see it. You were prepping, you were getting your water, whatever else. Bryce Spalding, who's coming on here in a minute to talk about some Reds prospects, as you can see in the rundown, literally said, don't even worry about it. Matt McLain's going to hit this thing out of here. And I kid you not, 2 seconds later, he just hit a mammo out of left center field. Did you even see it? Did you even get to see it?
Well, you guys were ahead of me somehow. My stream was behind, but yeah, Bryce manifested that. What a start! What a way to get Chatterbox Reds going. This is good news. It's meant to be. It's meant to be.
We're back. We're back. We're all the way back. Maybe not.
Love it.
We'll be honest. For those that are joining us, obviously it's a Saturday at 5:30, so we know it's not probably the best timing for our first show, but it was obviously great timing in regards to spring training, first game. For those that don't know, I'm Trace Fowler. He is Nick Kirby. I founded Chatterbox. Grew up my whole entire life playing baseball. Was fortunate enough to play collegiately and then I got to coach collegiately for a little bit of time. Kind of what I would say I don't want to say burn out, but burn out of baseball for a shorter bit of time. Fell out of love, if you will, and then started to get roped back in. And then as Chatterbox grew and grew, I was like, we need to get some Reds content, and look no farther than obviously you, Nick. So I appreciate you jumping on board with us, giving us a shot, and trying to do something relatively crazy. And hopefully we can live up to the standard that we've set ourselves to do. But for those that don't know, we plan to go live after every Reds game. Obviously, that's asking a lot of us too and our wives and families, but that's the goal. We want to be consistent, reliable, and more importantly, we want to try to get in here while everybody is pessimistic per se. I like the idea that we're jumping on the bandwagon before the bandwagon has anybody on it. Now, I know that obviously there's 30, 34, and probably hundreds, if not thousands, that eventually watch our show. So, you know, we're not the only ones that are optimistic, but that's what this goal is. I told you at the start of this, Nick, the goal is to be optimistic. We're not going to be unrealistic, but I think there's enough pessimistic folks out there that talk about Cincinnati Reds baseball that there's got to be a little bit of a niche, if you will, for us to try to provide some optimism, some hope, and to be realistic from time to time on what to expect. So, Nick, thanks for jumping on and joining me and Chatterbox for this journey. But I can't believe, again, I'm not even kidding. I can't believe that just happened.
What a way to start things off. Trace, I'm so excited to be a small part of Chatterbox. You guys have been crushing it with all of your content, and as you see these incredible graphics, thanks to our guys, Paul Fritchner, Casey McAllister, for all their hard work behind the scenes to get this thing up and running. I am just so excited to get things rolling. Been a dream of mine to cover the Reds, and kind of getting to live out a little bit of that. And I hope we can bring everyone some content, a little bit of optimism. We'll keep it real. But a little bit of optimism out there as well. And adding on to what Trey said, yeah, the goal go live after every Reds game during the regular season. Throughout spring training, we'll probably go live about once a week with a live YouTube show. But the cool thing I hope is we're going to do a little podcast, short little podcast every morning for you throughout spring training. Tell you about what happened the day before, 10, 15 minutes. If you've listened to our guy Paul Frischner's podcast, The Rebound Rundown, we're going to follow that same style that he set that I think works really well, that format. So really excited to get rolling and talk some Reds baseball.
Yeah, and for those of you that are joining, obviously for the first time, considering it's our first show, please feel free to jump into the chat, ask questions, do whatever it is that you wish. We obviously have a little bit of a storyline in regards to the rundown of what we plan to talk about. We'll get into some prospects here in just a moment. We have Bryce Spalding with us. We will bring him on in just a second. We'll get into some storylines, the biggest storylines that me and you both kind of feel like that have the most impact in regards to what we feel like this Red season should look like. And then just some expectations that go with that. And then finally some position battles that you can talk through. For those that maybe don't know, you came here because you know me or you came here because you know Nick. I will call a novice fan at this point. I feel like I know the game of baseball relatively well, if not great. But at the same time, I have not followed this franchise closely like Nick has over the last 7, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, whatever it's been, Nick, and certainly Bryce. And I thought of, again, I'm not trying to sound like I'm being lazy. I thought, you know what, I'm going to dig into this and know as much as I possibly can about every single prospect, all this stuff. And then I thought, you know what would be possibly better is just to be somewhat of the casual sports fan at the beginning, because over time I'll eventually get to where obviously I know just as much maybe as everybody else when it comes to diehard Reds fans. But at the beginning of this, I think there's a lot of people, they don't know the prospects, they don't know all of the guys that perhaps you are super excited about, and Bryce will share in a moment as well. But I've said it from time to time, I've always been of the mindset that prospects are what they are. I don't buy into all of it until I see them perform at a major league level. A guy like Indy I can get excited about because I've seen him do it for a year. I'm not going to get excited over a guy that's been at Double-A. That said, things change. I think that could possibly change when you see some of the top-end prospects that the Reds have. Certainly Elly De La Cruz is one guy that everyone has circled, but there's many of those guys. And I think that's something that we're going to try to highlight on this show, keep you relatively informed, and have fun. I mean, at the end of the day, the goal is to banter, to enjoy our company, not make this so much of a suit type show. In a way, that's kind of what Chatterbox has been built upon, is just authentic content from a fan base within Cincinnati, and try to replicate that message far and wide as we can. So thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. I am going to anything quickly before we bring in Bryce that you want to add to all of that, Nick?
Let's talk a little bit about the game real quick. The game today, for those who may not have watched, Brandon Williamson got the start for the Reds. Thought that he did really well. Gave up a couple, softly hit balls, but the most important thing, he didn't walk anyone. That was his biggest issue last year in the minor leagues, was his command, and it was good to see him come out and be aggressive. Man, he's a guy that if he can make the opening day rotation, I think you really, really bring some excitement to the rotation, along with Green, Ashcraft, and Lodolo.
So you think he's like a fifth starter type guy? He's gonna be on the border. You think they're more than likely he'll be on the borderline at the end of spring training of whether or not he's gonna be the fifth guy or he'll be sent on to AAA. I don't want to say. I love the fact that we're probably going to be on Mike and Mike. Like that's the theory behind this. I don't have a problem with him to a certain extent, Nick. I thought he was around the plate. He threw the ball well. It's his first time out. I'm not going to put a whole lot of stock in, quite frankly, a whole lot of anything at the beginning of spring training. He got hit hard to me. I mean, he got hit hard a little bit. The one thing I was actually pleased with, and I'm sure there's statistics that would probably back up if with one of us being right, whether he got hit hard or not, and you might already have the stats in front of you to prove me wrong. But I felt like he kind of managed the stress of that situation, and he got out of the inning, and he found a way to strike a guy out with a guy on third, I believe it was. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing that we all care about, in my opinion, that we're all looking forward to, is what these young guys look like, and we got a chance to see what those young guys look like on the back end. Marte's bigger than I expected him to be. Again, I didn't really get a chance to really dig into him a whole lot. Knew that he came over from Seattle, but he's a pretty big dude. Now, I know he began as a shortstop, correct, Kirby?
Yeah.
But I mean, he does look like he fills out pretty well to be a third baseman. And what's wild to me, if you're watching the game, he threw a ball across the diamond that I don't know who was actually playing first. I didn't recognize the guy, but I think he threw the ball so damn hard across the diamond, the guy at first base actually didn't get to the bag in time and wasn't ready, because the throw was actually fine, but the guy, and again, I keep calling him the guy. Do you know his name so I don't disrespect his family?
I think it was Alex McGarry.
All right. Well, Alex McGarry decides to catch the ball on the backside of the bag because he just literally couldn't get there in time. And, maybe it's Alex McGarry's first time playing first base. I don't know, but I'll give him a break and a pass. But at first, I will say it was abysmal listening. And I don't want to be the guy that complains about broadcasters right off the rip here. Maybe it's spring training for them too. But having to listen to the Indians broadcast crew for that game was not the most pleasing thing that I've had to do in my life. So, no disrespect to them, but they're out here telling me that Will Benson made a bad decision by trying not to score when there's nobody out, and the guy hit a cue shot out in right field. But that's here nor there. So let's bring in Bryce. We'll get into some Reds prospects. You got anything else to add? I mean, I don't even know if you got a chance to see the McLain home run, but it was hit.
Yeah, the only other player that really stuck out to me was Will Benson. Man, he's got some really good speed. I know that sprint speed by Statcast said he actually would rate out as the Reds' fastest runner based on what he did last year. So, man, he's a guy that I'm really excited to watch this spring, see if he can make the opening day roster. Definitely got a lot of upside. Really excited that the Reds were able to get him, just really because the Guardians needed to clear up a roster spot.
Right.
So yeah,
he was on their postseason roster last year, right?
Yeah, I mean, he really got a really tough deal at the end of the year. I mean, he got called up, but he got very sporadic at bats for them. They're in a pennant chase, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, he was on their postseason roster. I mean, they thought highly enough of him to have him on their roster. So definitely a guy with a lot of upside. Really excited to watch him this spring.
All right, let's shift over gears here to Reds prospects. We're going to bring in Bryce Spalding. If you don't know, you can find Bryce on Twitter. I had seen kind of some of his stuff via Twitter myself, then obviously reached out. I think that you also put us on to him, and we talked to Bryce about a month ago and said, hey, do you have any idea of wanting to be a part of any of this at all? And he obliged and said it was a good idea. So Bryce, welcome in, man. I really respect the fact that you're a fortune teller already. I'll be honest, I've never seen something quite like that. People say they call home runs all the time. That's taken it to another level, my man.
You saw it firsthand. I think when Votto started his streak in, 21, Nick? I think I predicted like 4 straight to the group chat. It was nuts. Just sometimes you got it.
So really quickly, Bryce, just your thoughts on the game itself. I don't know how much stock you put into this stuff, really. Obviously, we can get all excited about McLain, but let's be frank. If he goes 0 for his next 14, the next thing you know, half the fan base is going to be saying he can't play in the big leagues. But today, he's the hero, and he's going to be the next Barry Larkin, I'm sure. So, but that's kind of how it goes around here. That's what it is in Cincinnati. Not just Cincinnati, but Fandom as itself. But what do you take away from today's games, Bryce?
Yeah, it's hard to put too much stock into one game here or there. But it's good to see the guys back out, and good to see them, the guys you talk about all winter and leading up to it, and to see them in action, see them getting going. It's good to see Noel Marte, who hasn't played above high A, come in and not look out of place. Obviously, Matt McLain coming in and made a couple nice defensive plays, had 2 hits, and obviously hit a home run about 450 feet. So good day for him. And I like that you kind of hit on Williamson. I watched most every start of his last year in Louisville and in chat. So it's good to see him working through that, because I think that last year he probably would have folded in that situation and given up 4 or 5 runs and let it snowball. So it's good to see him against big league hitters, guys that are going to probably make the Guardians roster and really kind of work through that. So it's good to see on all ends there.
And that's one thing that I'm sure Nick will touch on in a second is the main goal, I think, for for many of these prospects, at least as a fan base, should just be that they get off to a decent start. I'm not saying they have to get off to a Jay Bruce type start, right? When he came up back in the day, it seemed like he was hitting 950 for 2 weeks, and it was like, well, at some point this is going to probably even out and he's going to slump. But I'm not suspecting they'll all be like that, but just to where, as we've talked about before, just the confidence level of these guys and feeling like they belong out there and feeling like they belong in a Reds uniform at the big league level, excuse me. And I think that's probably the thing I'm most excited for with Elly. I don't know what do we end up calling him. I mean, his name's longer than Elly De La Cruz. I've seen the EDLC. What does he end up being? I don't know. To many, he's the Messiah. I'm not sure, but it's like he bodes that. I'm not saying Joe Burrow. I don't want to jump sports too much here, but he comes off with such extreme confidence, man. And outside of him, though, I'm gonna put you on the spot, both of you. Your most excited prospect because he's kind of a cheat code.
Bryce is gonna steal mine.
Nick,
Go ahead. You're gonna steal it.
I will go Christian Encarnacion Strand.
I knew it. I knew
think that I think he brings something that a lot of these other Reds prospects don't, and that's power. He has 45 home run potential, especially in Great American Ballpark. He hit some of the furthest home runs to dead left and dead right last year that just didn't make sense. So I think for a hitting perspective, he's close as well. He was in Double-A last year with Elly and McLain and those guys, so he will be in that next wave. And I feel like he's going to make a big impact as well.
Yeah, I see Sir Boys in the chat, and a lot of our familiar foes. Boom, Sir Boys asking if we could sync up 700 WLW on here. I'm going to be honest. You could take it to the bank. Kirby will be my backup. I said I got an idea. I know it's illegal, just a thought. But I know for a fact, I know exactly how to get this stream on here. We could go live about the 8th inning every single game, put on some Cowboy and Tommy Thrall, and just let it rip and have some fun. And I just think that we'd probably get a cease and desist letter really quickly, and that probably wouldn't work out at Chatterbox Sports too long. So we'll see what we could do on the front. We have a little ticker, as you can see. That's the goal, is if the Reds start playing some meaningful baseball. Let's do that really fast. Let's have a fun game. The chat can chime in on what they think. If the Reds are playing meaningful baseball, and meaningful baseball is a very vague term, so let's put some boundaries around that. If they are within 6 games of first place, is that fair? What is that fair? Is that meaningful baseball, or is? I'll let you guys
Depends
chime
on
in.
if they're within 6 games in April or in September. I mean, that's.
Well, yeah, if there's
it's
6
within-
games to go. Actually, if there's 6 games to go and there's 6 games out, Kirby, I'll be
Oh,
honest.
no.
We're still. I'll live on that. I mean, I'll take it. I mean, I'm not going to complain. I'm just saying, where are we at? We gotta quickly come up with a sound plan. You guys, the two of you are smarter than me. Like I said, I went to a public school, public education. Half the time, the storylines and the recaps will have misspellings in them or whatever. But I think it's let's say 7 games. 7 games prior to the All-Star break. Is that meaningful baseball?
Yeah, I would say so. I
think
mean,
so.
especially for this year.
All right, and then after the All-Star break, it has to somewhat slim down. We'll call it 5. I mean, you got to get a week or so after spring break. But that's my point. If we get my main point to all this rambling is if we get within meaningful baseball right around the All-Star break, we will start going live earlier and earlier and starting to follow along and watch these games live with everybody and try to get some excitement. Because if you would have seen me, now, I don't know, our main man Kirby over here, he was digging around trying to get water, whatever he was doing, I don't know, but me and Bryce were locked in. So if you'd have seen my reaction and Bryce's reaction when that ball got tanked, that's what we're here for. We're hoping to have some fun. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I know. I get that there's all the old school stuff. Trust me, I was the first guy to be driving down to Great American Ballpark, listening to the after show on 700 or watching Reds live back in the day. But And I'm saying that those are still great platforms or whatever those may be, but oftentimes it's hard to maybe get to those places. It's easy to get on YouTube. And if you can get on YouTube and you want to have some fun, you can join us after, hopefully, and I say this confidently, every single Reds game. So you said Encarnacion Strand, and Nick's got to come up with a different plan. I'm sure. Do you know any other prospects, Nick?
Yeah, I know a few others. I'll go maybe a little outside the box. I'll go Spencer Steer since he's still technically a prospect. I think a lot of people wrote him off after, not tearing the cover off the ball in his 1 month sample last year. But Zips projects him as, I think, the highest player in wins above replacement this year on the Reds. I think he's kind of a forgotten guy. I think he's definitely a player that has the potential to have a breakout season this year, and he's going to be on the opening day roster unless something just incredibly goes wrong this spring.
Yeah, and I'm just excited, as I said before. I'm excited because I don't think we're banking on one guy or two guys. I mean, there is an actual some depth to this thing, to where hopefully we can be blind, throw the dart at the dartboard, and we'll land on somebody that ends up being a franchise type player again. And I said this on a show of ours last week, guys. As we go into the biggest storylines here, my biggest storyline is for the Reds, for most of my fandom. And again, this goes back to probably just before the run that they had for the NLCS back in 2012. So I'd say my fandom really started in 2007, 2008 days, which weren't the most glorious, as we all know. There's never been a really good center of the field for the Cincinnati Reds. There's never been a good center fielder coupled with a great middle infield and a what I would call an above-average catcher. And I'm not taking anything away from the Mesoraccos of the world, and I'm not taking anything away from Tucker Barnharts of the world. I'm not taking anything away from, Brandon Phillips. I know he exists. He's there. He played really well. But we never had a shortstop that was like, he's a dude. That guy can play. Cozart had, 1 year where he played above the back of his baseball card, if you will. But for the most part, that's what I'm most excited about. That's the biggest storyline for me is, can we solidify somebody that's going to play the shortstop position every single day, and you feel like you have an advantage over most of the league, if not everyone in the league. And yeah, I got all these people in the chat talking about Ramon Hernandez, and Ramon Hernandez he's a great catcher, but Tyler Stevenson can be special if he can stay healthy, which is another storyline, obviously. So that's the main thing. Can Stevenson stay healthy? Can we get a shortstop of the future? And can we find somebody that can play center field? I'm not saying every single damn day, guys, but how many times have you felt like in the past, I don't know, how long's it been, that we're always platooning guys? We're always trying to find a way to shuffle somebody in there that can make plays on a daily basis, and I'm hopeful that we'll find that. And Benson, I'm not saying that he's that guy, but there's something to be said about guys in Cleveland that come down here to Cincinnati. We've had some luck in the past with those kind of guys. Just saying. So, storylines from you two.
The biggest storyline for me is... Go ahead, Bryce.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head there, Trace. I like that they're acquiring and going to be playing athletes for the first time in a long time. And the whole team is going to be more athletic. I sent out a tweet today about how they need to run more. And I know that's not a super, pretty thing to do. And it may be some clunky games at times. You may win a game off an error, off a throwing error, but speed puts pressure on teams and contact puts pressure on teams. And that's why the guys like TJ Friedel and Jake Fraley and those guys, they have impactful roles on teams like this because they do things like that well. And I think that the Indias and the Stevensons, like, they put the ball in play a lot. And I like the fact that you're not going to be, like you said, you're not relying on maybe Joey Votto to hit 3 home runs in a game or 2 home runs in a game to win a game this year. And they're going to have to find ways to win. They don't have a bunch of boppers in the middle of the lineup. Maybe when Elly gets up, he's obviously going to be the guy that you're probably looking for that big hit or that big home run, but he can run too. He stole 47 bags last year. So yes. I think that's kind of been a mentality in the minor league system as well, is what I've seen. Even Marte, like you said, he's a big dude, but he stole 23 bags last year as well. I think he stole 16 in the Reds organization. So having those athletes and having those guys that can make impact in other ways, maybe if they're struggling a little bit, maybe if they're have hit 4 line drives right at somebody that day, but they can still make an impact if they get on base. I think that's going to be a really fun thing to watch and kind of see as the Reds progress here.
Yeah, good players that are athletic. That's nice to have, not athletic guys that we're trying to teach play baseball. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to anybody, but I'm sure there's plenty of people that know who I'm talking about. Go ahead, Curbs. Let's hear what you got, bro.
Yeah, I like what Bryce said about the athleticism. I definitely like that the Reds have really made that a big point of emphasis all throughout their draft picks and who they've acquired in trades. I think just personally, if you're talking just the single biggest storyline, it's Elly De La Cruz. It's going to be the thing hanging over the Reds all year is when is he getting called up? When he gets called up, how does he perform? I like that not every stock is into Elly De La Cruz. There's a lot of other prospects. I like that you have a plethora of guys because we know not all prospects are equal and not everyone will pan out. Right. But Elly De La Cruz is the player that I think has the highest ceiling we've seen out of a Reds prospect in a long, long time. Multiple people that study prospects, that live for prospects have said that he could be the best player on the planet. So that's not just me saying that as an optimistic guy. That's the reality. So it's when does he get called up? How does he do? Because Elly De La Cruz has the potential to come up and really capture the city, kind of like Jay Bruce did in 2008. And I just think Elly De La Cruz completely changes the entire outlook of a lot of people with how they view the Cincinnati Reds. And when you see him in person, I only got to see him play once. And he didn't even play that well in the one game I saw him. But just the physical specimen that he is, it's incredible. And I can't wait till people get a chance to see him at Great American Ballpark.
Reds in 4 comments. Love the postseason and World Series odds scrolling on the bottom. Also, quickly, thanks to Betfred for supporting our show, sponsoring our show, allowing us to continue to do this authentic content. So shout out to Betfred. I always feel like I have to say, if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER, 21 plus in Ohio. But that out of the way, listen, Reds in 4, here's what I got to say about the ticker having that in there, is that it seems like pretty good odds. I mean, you're getting a good value. Not saying it's going to hit, just saying it's good value.
Great value.
You throw some lunch money on there, you look like the smartest person in the world. Pete Rose did it. What could possibly be wrong that Pete Rose does? So you follow his lead. I mean, follow Pete's footsteps. It'll get you far in life. Where was I going? Let's go to some expectations. We'll do some position battles. You got anything else that you want to add?
I think you covered it. Just let's not go too deep into the Pete Rose talk.
No, what do you mean? He's I was talking about he's a great hitter. You need to get hits in your July 4th wiffle ball league. Talk to him. Reds expectations. This is where, tongue in cheek, we're talking about the World Series odds and the postseason odds at the bottom of the ticker. I think most reasonable people understand where the Reds are at. I think that there's a small minority, like there always is in social media landscape, of people that are going to always be yelling and screaming about the Castellinis and why somebody, case in point, we should probably pull up the screenshot of what you already got. People are upset that Elly De La Cruz didn't play today and hell's frozen over. I would like to think that if they were to win 77 games is like a number that I have in my head. I don't know, maybe it's just the 7 and the 7. But if they were to win 77 games, which would be an astronomical improvement, obviously, from last year, I don't even know if I care as much about that as I do what does India look like, what does Stevenson look like, do those guys continue to show signs of progress, will they stay healthy, and then what do these young guys do, because inevitably they're going to get opportunities and they're going to come up. And if we can start to build, as I said, at the end of this year, to where we don't have questions anymore, or we have some solid answers, and we go into the next spring training, and we start to expect to win. I know David Bell said some stuff that obviously pissed some people off in regards to his competing comments versus winning comments. He's not concerned about winning. He's concerned about competing. At some point, the culture does have to change for the Cincinnati Reds. I'm not saying that it's a terrible culture now, But again, I keep harping back to the Cincinnati Bengals right across the street when I start to try to make examples of all of this. There's one singular guy, in my opinion, that walked into a facility and decided in his mind he didn't care what happened behind him. He doesn't care about the past. Bungles, it didn't matter to him. His name's Joe Burrow. He walked in the door and he said, I'm here to win, and that's what we're going to do. I'm hopeful that we find that guy. Now, that's asking a lot. I know. Joe Burrow's done a lot for the city, and he will continue to do a lot for the city. But if we can find a couple of leaders, and then on top of that, we win some games more than we did last year, and we can kind of start to take those pessimistic fan base, or this pessimistic fandom, if you will, and start to shift it a little bit towards an optimistic viewpoint. That's my goal, and that's the expectations I think people should have. I'm not a David Bell stan. I'm not sure I'm a big fan, to be frank. I'm continuing to give him more and more grace and opportunity because I know he just hasn't had the guys. But at the same time, there does need to be a culture shift, hopefully, towards the end of this year of expecting to go out and win games and not just compete. We'll see what happens. But that's kind of my expectations going into the year. We'll jump over to Bryce, get yours, and then we'll finish off with Nick.
Yeah, no, I think you hit it on the head there, Trace. I think that it's about, obviously, nobody wants to hear it, but you want good years from Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Graham Ashcraft.
Right.
Like you said, you want good years from Jonathan India, Tyler Stevenson. You want to see the Elly De La Cruzes, the Matt McLains, the Christian Encarnacion Strands. You want to see those guys come up and start to get their feet wet. And if they start winning and they start establishing that culture along the way, obviously that's a positive. But I don't want to be in September and maybe Elly hits a home run and McLain has 2 hits and Hunter Green throws 7 scoreless innings, but they lose 4-3, and I don't want to be mad about that. I want to be excited about that. And like you said, build that what we have going into next year, where maybe we expect to win that game next year. Maybe we score another run, or maybe we hold that lead. So I think that you want to see those guys come up. I still think they can be competitive this year. I think they have some decent pieces that will provide what they need to provide this year. I'd like to see Jake Fraley take another step. I'd like to see TJ Friedel take another step. So those guys can be solid players on a good team there. So.
Yeah, I don't think wins and losses is a great way to evaluate this team. I know a lot of people hate that, but I mean, I think the Reds could win 75 games this year and it not be a successful season if the guys that are leading them are guys that aren't going to be around. Like if it's Will Myers and even Joey Votto have like these resurgent years and are the ones that carry the Reds, but like the big 3 in the rotation of Green, Ashcraft, and Lodolo don't really take steps or, take a big step back, then I don't think it's a successful year. So I think you really have to look at where does the Reds look as a whole going into next season, the minor leagues, how are these guys developing that are the next crop behind, like the Edwin Arroyos and Noelvi Marte, where are they at? And really the rotation to me is the biggest key for the Reds. I think the Reds have so many position prospects that if a couple of these guys don't, like Spencer Spear doesn't pan out, there's more guys behind him. Right. If Green and Lodolo don't pan out, that's where I think it becomes a little bit more tricky to build a good team and a good core round. I think those are the guys that really have to be good for the Reds to take a step forward.
Yeah, first of all, Casey McAllister with the big super chat says the Reds have a chance with Elly De La Cruz. They've got potential great leaders in India and Stevenson. If the pitchers improve, they'll be great. I think that's optimistic. I didn't want to talk about Lodolo and Hunter and Ashcraft because honestly, when it comes to pessimism, it's not even pessimism for me. It's just a concern. It's like just knowing the statistics. I just pray those guys stay healthy. If those guys do get hurt or something happens, then that's where it's like, you start to beat your head on the table and you just wonder how in the world can we finally get over the hump if we can't find guys that are consistently going to be able to go out and shove it. And it's one thing to think you could have position players all over the diamond and be able to go out and win pennants and do whatever. But at the end of the day, we all know it is what it is. You got to have top-of-the-line arms in order to win championships, and those guys are that. I do believe they are that. The question then becomes, can they stay healthy? And that's something that nobody can predict. So it's not something to really talk about. It's just that's something I try to stay away from and steer clear of and just not think about, because it's again, a very, very fickle thing in baseball. I harpen back to Senzel. I know he's got a lot of hate in this town from time to time because he just can't stay on the field. And again, this is where I harpen back to playing the game for a decent amount of time. I obviously didn't play at the highest of levels, but it's a grind, and sometimes your body fails you, and it's not your fault that your body fails you. It's just the way the genetics played out, and it's just some unfortunate things that have happened. And I try to give Senzel a little bit of grace when it comes to that, because I think he cares. I think that oftentimes it's been one of those things where, I don't think he's certainly not faking injuries. He's certainly not trying to not play. So I kind of, just hope that we don't have an injury bug per se this year. Going through some comments, David says, I'm not a Bell fan, but I can't hold him responsible for last year or this year, with as much of the roster has been overhauled and relying on prospects. His pitching staff management has been awful. We'll get into that, obviously, towards the season and be able to talk through some of these concerns that people have. But at the end of the day, what I seen was an absolute bomb from McLain over the left field wall. So most things on this podcast, if we're not going to be optimistic on this podcast, then we'll just cancel the whole show, because I sat here and I just watched, hopefully, maybe a shortstop at the future. And I'm not giving up on Barrero yet either, by the way. I know there's a lot of people out there that want to throw pitchforks at my man and want to act like he's completely done and they're tired of him, blah, blah, blah. Let's slow our roll down a little bit. I'm not suggesting that he's going to be, again, as I said before, the next Barry Larkin, but let's give him a little bit of time. There was another guy when I first started getting into the Reds pretty heavily named Encarnacion. He played third base. I don't know if anybody remembers him. He was pretty good too, and everybody acted like he was a piece of you-know-what, and then next thing you know, they ship him off, and he had a pretty good career after he left, I'm just saying. So for whatever happens, maybe Barrero's time will come to a halt at some point, because obviously all the prospects behind him, but I'm not willing to give up on him yet, which is probably a decent transition, I would assume, into the last one, which is some position battles. That's certainly probably one of them. This is an area of subject matter that I don't know if I have a whole host of knowledge about. I kind of like sit back and maybe listen to the two of you talk. I'll throw it to you first, Kirby, just in regards to what your expectations are when it comes to position battles, what people that are interested in the Reds, spring training games, what they should be looking for, etc.
I think the outfield's probably the most interesting. I mean, Will Myers and Jake Fraley are pretty much locks, but then you have a case like there's maybe like 9 other guys in the mix that have legitimate shots, with Friedel, Senzel, probably not going to be ready. Pender, Nick Solak's a guy I really like. Got a lot of upside. And then, of course, Will Benson, Ciani, Martini, Plummer, and Fairchild. I mean, there's quite a list, and I don't think all those guys are necessarily just, scrap heap guys that have no upside. There's a lot of guys on that list that do have some upside. So it'll be interesting to see, number one, who makes the opening day roster of that outfield, who goes to AAA. Some of it might be about options. That's another thing that kind of goes into this as well, is you don't want to kick a guy to AAA or kick a guy off your roster that doesn't have options and lose him, because then 2 weeks later you'll have an injury to your outfield and then you can't go get another outfielder out of AAA. So I think that's probably the most interesting position battle to me to watch this spring.
Bryce, you have anything that you're looking forward to, or?
Yeah, no, I think outfield definitely is a big one, but Nick and I talk about it quite a bit. Injuries normally handle a lot of the question marks as you are working through this. Obviously, nobody wants to sit around and say, this guy's going to get injured, whatever you may have it. But injuries happen. Last year, we were expecting Donovan Solano and a couple other guys to be in the mix on opening day, and obviously injuries just kept happening and kept happening and kept happening for the Reds last year. So obviously having quality depth like Nick talked about is a positive. And I think that Crowell and company have done a really good job of addressing that depth concern this offseason.
Couple quick hitting topics that aren't on the sheet that obviously are the talk of the town, if you will. One of them is the pitch clock. I think that there's going to be situations this year where the pitch clock is going to rear its ugly head because it's just people not being completely used to it. and it's going to be a big moment in the game. We've already seen it happen in the Braves game. I don't know if you've been paying attention on Twitter, but there is a little bit of a controversy going on in regards to the pitch clock in big moments. I think the bases were loaded, I believe, in maybe the 6th or 7th inning tie game, and they called the hitter out for not being ready. I think, on a 2-2 count or whatever it was. So I love it. I think that I'm hopeful that, again, similar to the play clock in football, that's how the umpires handle it. If it's one of those things where it's a bang-bang call and we're kind of right in the middle of it, then let's just let it go and live with the fact that we're kind of abiding by the rules the way they were designed and what their purpose is. I hope we don't get into a situation where, similar to sometimes when there's a rule change in either basketball or some other sports, and they overcall it to try to correct something that maybe doesn't need to be corrected, if that makes sense. And I genuinely do like it. I just concern myself over the idea of it being the bottom of the 9th, a 2-2 count, bases are loaded, fans are excited, and we have some guy get his belt buckle gets buzzed right before a guy throws a pitch or whatever, and we decide to call it. I think that they're going to overemphasize it in spring training is my hope. And if it is bang, bang, or it's relatively close, it's play on. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but that's my prayer. I don't know if it'll work out that way, but I'm hoping that it doesn't become a major topic. I know you've already talked about it a little bit at length, Kirby. You've seen it in minor leagues last year. I'm sure, Bryce, you're a minor league guy, so you've probably seen them use it last year. But here's my main thing. When you guys use that argument to me, that they used it in the minor leagues and it kind of became something that you forgot about. This is the big leagues, though. And losing a game at the minor league level in the middle of June because some guy called a strike on somebody isn't going to be as big of a controversial deal as something that might decide a pennant race at the very end of the year. So I get the concept of saying that it has been used in the minor leagues, but just because the XFL does it and it works relatively well doesn't mean the NFL is going to adopt it tomorrow. Is that fair, or am I being too harsh?
Yeah, I think Bryce can probably speak a little bit more to this, but this was rarely ever an issue in minor league baseball last year. And I do think they're probably overcompensating in spring training to establish this rule, which they need to do. I mean, I think you got to hammer it down in spring training, maybe be a little more aggressive in calling guys out so hey, this is a real thing. So when it gets to the regular season, it's not an issue. I agree. There probably should be a little bit of grace if it's the bottom of the 9th inning. Like, there should be some common sense involved in this. But I love almost all the rules that MLB's doing. I know everyone doesn't, but most of the rule changes aren't about the diehard fan. It's not to make the diehard fan love the game of baseball more. It's to attract more casual fans and speeding up the game. Sir Boy Wonder commented 2 hours, 23 minutes. That's a good thing. That's a good thing for baseball. The extra inning rule, not having games go into 16 innings where there's 5 people in the stands. That's a good thing for baseball. You can take your kid and see the whole game. The stolen bases that'll be increased. That's a good thing for the game with the bigger bases, with the pickoff rules. They're not geared towards the guys who are going to watch all 162 games. They're geared towards the guys that are going to the guys and girls that are going to watch 15, 20 games. And I think it's just a good thing overall. And try to have, I think if you have that mindset, I think you'll appreciate it a little bit more. But Bryce, talk about the minor leagues. What did you see with the pitch clock last year?
Yeah, I think that it really became early in April, obviously, whenever they were getting used to it as well and kind of getting in a full swing of things. You don't even really see batters step out as much anymore. And as a former hitter who really valued that, it's kind of crazy for me to think about. But I think that it definitely is going to be an adjustment for veterans for sure. Right. But I think this 2-week, 3-week in spring training, I think is going to be a big thing for them because, like I said, from probably June on, I didn't see any infractions on a guy getting called a strike or a ball or even anything remotely like that. So I think that we may see something early in the season, maybe April, maybe into May a little bit, but I think it'll be a non-issue here shortly.
Yeah.
And Bryce, most of the players, announcers, everyone that I've talked to that's associated with minor league baseball, they all grew to really love it too. It wasn't just the fans.
Yeah.
Just about everyone universally said, hey, you know what? This is actually pretty good. This isn't a bad thing.
Yeah,
for sure. And I think
Go ahead, Bryce. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. I just think that you even heard announcers talking about it as a season. Jim Kelch, he called games for the Reds in the past, and he calls the Bats games, and Nick Curran as well. I talked to them some, and they both really like it, and they kind of got in a rhythm as well. I know a lot of people were worried about the TV and radio guys kind of finding that dead air to talk about a little bit. They won't have that anymore. So obviously, I really loved and appreciated Vin Scully and all the great announcers that we've had in our game in the past. But if you can finish a Major League Baseball game in 2 hours and 23 minutes, having somebody that's going to have a 2-year-old and a newborn here shortly, I'm going to be able to go to Reds games and be able to enjoy that a little bit more.
Yeah. My main thing about the pace of play, the timing, I'm not so worried about how long the game lasts. Obviously, it being shorter helps significantly, but I just think it does help with the fluidity of the game, right? It certainly feels like it's something more enjoyable to watch, at least so far, in my experience. I don't know if the Major League Baseball has gotten to the point where they have, I see people in the chat talking about the idea that they're trying to cater to people with short attention spans. I don't know if it's all that. I know that that's maybe slightly part of it, but I think some of it is like, it does get tiring watching guys adjust their batting gloves 5-6 times, stepping in, stepping out. Guy goes to the rosin bag, goes to the hat, then he decides to rub the dirt. At some point, all of the semantics of all of that become more of superstitious things that players do, which is I was a part of that. But you get to where that stuff just drags and it drags and it drags, and I do enjoy it. I just don't want it to become something that it's like we're calling it based off of a small, minute fraction of a second when that's not really the nature of the rule and why it was created. But rules are rules, so you can't really kind of let people get away with it too much or else they'll start to push that boundary, and we'll see how it goes. Retired vet, as always, salute to you. I understand there's going to be pessimistic people that come in here from time to time, and it's not. I don't think it's any of our jobs to try to change that, and I've said it from time to time. You have every right to be pessimistic. You have every right to be disgruntled. I completely understand that. This franchise has struggled. No one's trying to go to bat for the lack of success of the last how many ever years it's been. But I do think that there's something to be said about having some optimism, because at the end of the day, as I've seen Kirby's profile say, life's too short to be pissed off about baseball all the time. So let's just try to have fun and enjoy it. We're 1-0 in spring training. I get it. It doesn't mean a damn thing other than make our Saturday nights a little bit better. We got our shortstop of the future, if you don't know. Let's see here, guys. McLain. One quick thing I wanted to add before we jump off here. The pitch clock also creates opportunities within a game that never used to exist that can be taken advantage of. Seen in the first inning, Jonathan India did it to perfection. Jonathan India was staring at the pitch clock, also was looking at the mannerisms of the pitcher, realized that the pitcher was trying to keep up with the pitch clock, and he wanted to make sure he was going to pitch the ball in time. Therefore, the timing mechanism of both of those kind of got to where India stole third base relatively easily. That's not going to happen every single time. Clearly, pitchers eventually are going to catch on, and I don't know if it's going to matter, because the Reds, by the time that they become relatively relevant, if we want to call it that, this will probably be a relatively normal thing. But for teams that steal bags and can run bases relatively well, which is what we've talked about at the beginning of the show, I genuinely think that the pitch clock is going to help induce guys that steal bases, and it's going to allow them to probably time pitchers when they never would have been able to do that before. And I'm all for that. If the more action we can get in baseball, I'm so thankful they got rid of the shifts personally. I get the idea of bunting. I've heard that time and time again, and I don't want to rip my headset off on the first show about just bunt the ball. I don't go to baseball games to want to watch the guy that I paid $250 million to bunt the ball. I understand that he could bunt the ball, but I don't want to watch him bunt the ball. If we could get rid of pitchers hitting, which we did, it was great. And you know what? You remember when everyone sat around and wanted to complain to the moon and back about, yeah, man, they're going to get rid of pitchers hitting. What are we going to do? And next thing you know, my man Marty Brenneman, a year after they did it, he says, you know what? It's kind of nice watching hitters hit and not having to worry about the pitchers going up there. It's like, yeah, it is, isn't it? It's fun to watch baseball. So at the end of the day, I'm just thankful that when a left-hander gets up there, it doesn't look like there's 15 people, and I know there's only 9 that are out there, okay, before you boot in the comments. But it looks like there's 15 people on the right side of the diamond, and Joey Votto hits a ball 160 miles an hour off his bat, and it just so happens to be caught by the third baseman who happens to be playing right field. I was so tired of that, guys. And to be honest, the fact that that's gone, let's get more runners on base, let's steal more bases, let's put the ball in play and see more action. And in a way, that's kind of where I lost interest in the game of baseball for a short amount of time. Is it was walks and home runs, and it felt like there wasn't any action as to where when we first got on this chat, people were talking about that looked like the 90s Reds out there stealing bases everywhere. And hopefully that's what this team becomes. Final parting thoughts on I'll let you, Bryce, go first, and then me and Nick will kind of share some visions and where we're going to start going forward, and then I'll let you go, Bryce. Any lasting thoughts on the very inaugural Chatterbox Reds spring training that you called a home run in the very first time?
I appreciate you all having me, man. It's going to be a fun season. Excited to see these young guys come up and make their mark, and looking forward to doing this more often.
All right, Bryce. I will we'll let you go, and I appreciate you jumping on here with us.
Yes, sir. Appreciate y'all.
All right, thanks, man. All right, Kirby.
I got one more point about the game.
Go ahead.
To that.
Go ahead.
Josh Naylor of the Guardians attempted a stolen base in the first inning. He only attempted 7 all last year. So I think
Terrible
that kind of
decision.
shows.
Terrible decision,
Well,
by
yeah.
the way.
But I think it just shows, like, I think there's going to be teams more aggressive. And I'm with you 100%. The more action, the more we got going on, the better. I think it's good for the game. I think it's good for the older fans. It's good for the older fans, good for the younger fans, it's good for everyone. So let's go.
Yep. Some housekeeping items. We are going to be back on air. I believe we made that decision yesterday. Nick, I'll let you share it so I don't mess it up, but I want to say it was Wednesday, but you go ahead and tell the audience when we'll be back.
Wednesday, probably going to go on about midnight. Nah, maybe like 9:30. We haven't. Me and Trace are both night owls, and like to go on after the kids go to bed. So, but yeah, we'll do Wednesday night. We'll let everyone know what time. I'll blow up your social medias and let you know.
Yeah. So I want to say thank you for watching. Genuinely mean that. I know some of you have never seen Chatterbox Sports before. Maybe some of you are folks that are in the chat every day. If you don't know, we do a daily sports show Monday through Friday. It is called Off the Bench with Tom Brenneman. I know for many of you, maybe you're not big fans of Tom. Openly admitted, and I've said it before, before I met Tom, I felt like there was some pessimistic attitudes that he had before he came on overboard with us. And I think, Nick, you even said you felt the same way, to where his show is something I encourage you to check out, if nothing else, at least once or twice. He does a great job. And then we have some other shows that come on there after called The Rebound Rundown. Also, something really quickly that Kirby is promoting here. It is a daily local college basketball with Paul Fritchner, very knowledgeable guy. The fact that March Madness is around the corner, it is also in podcast form. So check out The Rebound Rundown. Check out Off the Bench. Please come back and have fun with us all year long. We'll continue to do this. We do it out of our houses. I'll also admit, very first time on the air, there's probably a good chance that Nick's kids will run in the background at one point. My kids are running around on their back point. We're normal people too. And at the end of the day, we're just trying to create some fun content, have fun with you guys, enjoy our local teams in Cincinnati as much as we possibly can. And I think we're getting in relatively at the ground floor with the Cincinnati Reds. So until next time, we appreciate you tuning in. And thanks to Nick Kirby, because he is the audio engineer of all audio engineers. We are going to leave here, I think, with some outro music. Possibly. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah,
is it going to play or not?
It's going. You got it. It's going. But yeah, check out this in podcast form. First one will be up tomorrow. It's everywhere you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that fun stuff. And like I said, episodes every morning throughout spring, just covering the team and all that kind of stuff. Is it coming?
Here's the thing. I'll make you guys a deal. If the Reds win, do you want to dunk? You want me to hit a 3? I need some comments fast so I know what we're doing. After every Reds win, I need to hit either a jump shot or a dunk.
No, it's got to be a dunk. Got to be a dunk. Come on.
Okay. All right. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to end the show on a dunk after every Reds win. And Kirby's then going to throw an overlay up, so this all should work. First time trying it, so let's just give it a shot. I got to find a ball probably, too. I'll go between the legs.
Boy.
This is going to be... athleticism. You want some athleticism? I'm going to show you some athleticism right here. Now that is how you end the show.